Hey guys, welcome to Naleti Tilena. It's your girl Naleti, and I hope you learn from this video and also enjoy. So today we're going to be talking about, how Zimbabweans have reacted or are reacting to the current events in the world. It's safe to say the world is very crazy right now. It's like going very, very crazy right now, and a lot of things have been happening. But what really kind of pushed me to make this video was everything concerning the protests against police brutality towards Black people in America, especially spurred by the death of George Floyd and the actions of Amy Cooper. If you're on the internet, the same internet that you're using to watch this video, then I'm sure you're well versed in the story. But just for the general gist of it, for the longest time, there's been police brutality towards Black people in America, and just in general, institutionalized racism against, well, people of color, but specifically Black people in this case. Those two terms are not interchangeable. But yeah, and so a lot of people have not been very, very, content with that. It's not an issue of just disgruntlement, but if you're literally being, targeted, it's very concerning in a country where you're supposed to be free. So protests and riots have been happening because of that, and there's been a lot of international support or international condemnation of those protests and riots. Really, America right now is on the world stage again after its mishandling of the coronavirus. But yeah. So anyways, like I said, there's been international support and condemnation, more support more than anything, let me not lie. And of course, part of that international community are Zimbabweans in the social media space. Now, a lot of Zimbabweans have been tweeting their support, but some Zimbabweans are very concerned about the fact that why are we concerned about other people's problems when we have our own, which ultimately inspired this video, which will probably be titled, "Should Zimbabweans care about what happens in other people's countries, in other countries?" In general, there are two camps in this argument: those that are for Zimbabweans being concerned about other people's issues or problems, and those who aren't very keen, those that say we shouldn't be concerned, that's none of our business, and this, that, and the third. So I will be talking about some of the arguments that I have and have seen and have heard of in terms of both sides of the coin. And we'll be starting with the yes, Zimbabweans should care what happens in other people's countries and support them. And no, Zimbabweans shouldn't care what happens in other people's countries and should not bother supporting them. In the yes camp, the first one will be that other people's suffering is worth fighting for regardless. I think it's very selfish, especially in this globalized world, in a world of globalization, that we should be concerned about what happens to us and what happens to us only. We're way too connected as a world right now to kind of turn a blind eye to what happens in other people's countries. I think the cause is very noble in terms of the ultimate, display of racism and brutality against human lives. That shouldn't be necessarily a cause that no one should care about. So I do understand people's concern and support, because any cause is worth fighting for. Just because it's not my experience doesn't mean that I get to ignore it or whatever, you know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely understand where people are coming from in that regard, in terms of other people's suffering or other people's problems are worth fighting for. They are worthy of support, especially if they're wronged, and yeah. The second point in the yes camp is that acknowledging and supporting the cause for other people's problems does not mean the erasure of our own problems. Basically, what that means is that if you support somebody else or acknowledge that they're going through something, it is not an admission that you yourself have a perfect life. As Zimbabweans, I think we have like 40 years of problems, so we know a thing or two about suffering, I think. And so us supporting other people or acknowledging their suffering doesn't mean we're oblivious to all of that, doesn't mean that all of those problems don't exist. It just means at the current moment, we're helping you deal with your problems, or we're helping to shine a light on your problems. The next point is that seeing that we take a lot of culture in terms of pop culture from other people's cultures, it makes sense that we give back to them by supporting their causes. And what I mean by this is that we take quite a lot of inspiration and just general pop culture in terms of art, music, and slang from other countries such as the US, the UK, and South Africa. And so to continuously take from that and not give back is a bit, it's a lot. It's just not great, and I don't think that's what we need to do. And what I mean by this, if we talk about something like rap music and hip hop originated from the US, but look at how many people are now invested in that. Talk about, the way we dress, even though it's localized, it's heavily influenced by other people. The slang we use on the internet and face to face is from other people's cultures, is from, those, mainly the way I see it, mainly those three countries. So it's a bit, I guess ungrateful, or I can't find the word at all. I cannot find the word to say that. It just doesn't feel right to continuously take from them and not give back. I know some of you, which is weird, will say, oh, Black Americans don't have culture. They do. It's just that for a lot of Black Americans and Black British people, the culture they create is taken away from them and marketed as the general culture of the country that they're coming from. And so the ownership of that culture is taken away from them. Therefore, it seems as if they don't have it. For example, hip hop is a cultural thing for Black people in America. There's a general culture that they have. Unfortunately, it's marketed as American pop culture, as in pop culture belonging to the rest of the country, and their culture gets monetized and sold without their permission. Their ownership of that culture is taken away. Therefore, it seems as if they don't have much, which they do. We all know a lot of the times that what ends up being a trend or being a heavy influence in pop culture really originates a lot from the African American community in America. So apply that type of logic for a lot of cultures, as in the Black British culture and South African culture, where a lot of that, a lot of their culture is taken away from them, and such that, and stuff like that. We'll have to edit that out, I think. Yeah. Ooh. So a lot of their cultures just end up being taken away from them. And so my point is that we cannot keep on saying stuff like Wagwan, which is from Black British people, consuming South African music and not supporting them. And the reason why I'm now adding South Africa is because I just remembered when femicide became a very, very big issue in South Africa. Mainly not caused by, but really Uyinene's story was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And so a lot of us were vocal about that. And so I thought that was a great thing, because we continuously watch South African content, listen to South African music. So seeing that we consume a lot of that, and a lot of that bleeds into what we talk about and what we, do, it's very great to see that we're willing to support South Africans when they are going through, hardships such as that. And my hope is that we can do that for other countries such as America. The second last point I have, belonging to the yes camp of whether or not Zimbabweans should be concerned about other countries' problems, is that a lot of their problems mirror our own. There are a lot of problems or issues or topics that are present in almost every country, that are present around the world, around the globe. And seeing how another country deals with it can also help us deal with our very own expression of that particular issue. And so supporting their fight and helping their fight will also, help us try to, gather some tools to deal with the problems that we face here in Zimbabwe. I just think that, there's racism in Zimbabwe, and I don't know if we'll get to the point of protesting, because as Zimbabweans, come on, protesting, we don't do that. But in general, seeing that, a lot of countries deal with this particular problem, being invested in their fight can also help us gather some tools or help us learn what to do, what not to do when concerning this issue, this, that, and the third. It also helps us see our differences. It's like, oh, okay, we might not be able to apply this tool because it is concerning that particular form of racism and we don't experience that, or we experience it in a different way. Therefore, we need to modify that tool. It's just in general different, okay? Sometimes how people, deal with problems. And so to exclude yourself from the conversation could prove detrimental, because you could lose out. And so if we are sort of going through a similar problem, I don't see why we shouldn't help. You see what I mean? So yeah, that's the one point, the second last point, that other people's problems mirror our own, and by seeing them deal with that and helping them deal with that, we can also help ourselves. Dealing with other people's issues can also help us reflect on our own issues. Reflection is very, very, very important. And so seeing how other people deal with it, seeing how other people go through it, can really help us bring in a new perspective, or shine a new light on the problem, perhaps. The last point in the yes camp is it is generally good to be cultured, It's just a good thing to know what's happening around the world, so that you can join in conversations whenever those topics come up. Wow. And, it's just good to know that you are not alone. No one man lives on an island. So just finding out how we're so connected, how some of the problems we face have a similar source or the same source, it's just a good thing to know what's going on, to just be well knowledgeable. It's impressive, and it just genuinely helps you as a person. Cultured people seem very intelligent and are impressive, and it adds value to your life to gain knowledge, especially about other people's suffering, not to bring you down, but to really just think about the world at large and not be always concerned with yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you're, this one is not one I would recommend, but whatever. Some people need to look at other people's problems to feel better about themselves, or to be more grateful about their own circumstances. To be grateful for the blessings you have does not mean that you don't have problems, does not mean that you don't have issues that you're going through. As Zimbabweans, a lot of people will be like, we are cursed, we are this, we are that. And although I don't want to put that out into the universe, wow, I also understand where people are coming from. Wow, I also understand where people are coming from when they say all of that. However, just seeing other people's, struggles can help put into perspective how in other areas we are blessed. Personally, I don't like that, because I don't know, I just don't like using other people's suffering as a springboard for a way to feel better about yourself. I think you should just be grateful for what you have, regardless of what happens outside. But I think for some people, they need that to kind of put things back into perspective. So yeah, you should be concerned in order to just be in general knowledgeable about what's happening in the world. Because in this age of globalization, what happens outside of our country still does affect our country. So to be ignorant to that, I think, is you're doing a disservice to yourself, really. So just know what happens around the world and realize that these things almost have like a domino effect. They ultimately affect us one way or the other. I see that I have 5 points for the yes camp and 4 for the no camp. In terms of yes or no, should Zimbabweans be concerned with what happens in other countries? I don't know if I should have come up with the 5th point for the no camp to be balanced, but we'll just carry on anyway, and you guys will tell me what you guys think so far of the video and the balance of the two arguments down below in the comments. If you get it to this far in the video, comment. What should you guys comment? Light, because I just looked at a light. If you've gotten to this part of the video, comment light. The first point in the no camp is that generally what happens with some people is that in being concerned with other people's problems, they tend to neglect our very own here in Zimbabwe. So some people might be more concerned or well versed with problems that are currently happening, or with the news that is currently happening in America, more than the news that is currently happening in Zimbabwe right now. And that's not a good thing, because in as much as their suffering is valid, so is ours. We need to be united against whatever we face here in Zimbabwe. We need to be well versed with what's happening in our own country. Charity begins at home. All these things, they affect us more directly, and the effect is more immediate for us compared to what happens around the world. We understand that what happens around the world is important, but people need to also be concerned with what happens in Zimbabwe right now. And the concerning thing is that a lot of people are more well versed. Is that English? I think people are more knowledgeable on the histories and the current events of other countries than they are of their own in terms of Zimbabwe. And I think that's very sad. So I just hope that the problem is that people just lose sight of the fact that they have their own things to deal with at home. And I don't know, maybe it's a way to cope for some people, like, I don't have to think about the problem if I'm just looking at other people's problem. And for me, I'm not really down with that. I do think that sometimes we tend to neglect our own issues, or we talk about them for like 2 seconds and then boom, we move on without really just delving deep into the issue, really dealing with it, dealing with the root cause, all of that, the aftermath. Not much of that happens, and I understand people's frustration when that occurs, in the sense of you all seem to be more concerned with, like, truly concerned with other people's problems, but when we bring our problems to light, it's crickets. The second point for the no camp is that people hardly check for us when we suffer. And I think there's a good reason for that. Honestly, as Zimbabweans, we've just had problem after problem after problem after problem. And so it may seem tiring to continuously deal with our problems. However, I understand and I feel it sometimes, seeing that we get concerned about other people's problems, we get concerned on the behalf of other people, and then when we are going through something, crickets, I mean, a good counter to that argument is when Cyclone Idai occurred, and unfortunately people in Chimanimani suffered and the whole world was made aware. But other than that, there are lots of issues where we as Zimbabweans are suffering, but no one's checking for us because I guess we're a small third world country that's always going through something. So like, what's new? And it's frustrating. It's like, come on, like really? Oh, it's really painful sometimes to think about, all the things that we could have had help for, or maybe people gave us, okay, let me not say maybe, a lot of the time we've had aid. And I don't want to talk further on this point because so yeah, it's just really frustrating that and I get it. It seems that when we have our own problems, no one's checking for us when we're going through it. I will say, in terms of giving hope to people, is that I remember when we had the internet shut down, I had a Twitter friend, a Twitter friend on Twitter, and she is from Nigeria, and she checked up on me, and she's like, how are you doing? I hear what's going on in Zimbabwe. And people did speak out about what was happening. But yeah, it's just sometimes feel as if we're alone, no one cares for us, we are persona non grata, no one is checking for us. In fact, I feel like sometimes people have a disdain for Zimbabweans, or with being a Zimbabwean, and so that's not always the greatest feeling. The third point is that in as much as you are concerned for other people, you might not be able to help effectively. You might be just contributing in terms of noise, So up until we are well versed with the problem and we can help effectively, maybe we should take a step back in terms of being involved in other people's, countries and other people's problems. It's just embarrassing to speak up about something, or speak up in a room and be like, girl, actually you're wrong, like, sit down, you're wrong, girl. And it's okay, no one's talking to Zimbabweans like that, but it's just like, if you don't truly know what's happening, if you don't truly know a way to help, if you're just barging into the conversation and thinking that you're helping when you're not, what good is that? There's just, what good is being ignorant? And unfortunately for a lot of us, we're ignorant in a lot of issues. It might not be specifically what's happening in America right now, but there are still a lot of countries that suffer that we might want to help in terms of giving our support, but we don't know enough. We don't know a lot, and we don't know how to help effectively, and therefore we should just shut up. I guess. The fourth point, in terms of no, Zimbabweans should not be concerned about what happens in other people's countries, is that, do people actually need our help as Zimbabweans, especially in terms of social media support? Very few Zimbabweans are active on social media because very few Zimbabweans have access to the internet. And even at that point, we are a small drop in the ocean of the internet. So do we even make a difference? Not only that, do they need our help? Do people need the help of a small drop in the ocean of the internet for their immense problems? And so, especially if we're not well versed, again, like I said before, some of us, or a lot of us, may not be well versed in whatever issue we're trying to speak out on, and so that ends up embarrassing us more than doing good for the people concerned. So do people actually need our help out there, or they can deal with the problem regardless of whether or not we are involved or not? I swear, like, every time I do a video, I start to question my English. I start to be like, am I good at this English thing, or I'm just hoping that I'll be able to get my point across? But yeah, in general, if you are not needed, do not step in. And I see that sometimes when countries don't when countries go through stuff, they don't necessarily ask for the help of the rest of the world. They don't call upon the masses for help, and therefore, I guess if you weren't asked to join, then don't insert yourself in there. So I have a bonus point for the no side of the argument, and I came up with this argument whilst I was filming the third point, which was nice because as I was talking, I was like, wait a minute, wow, I've got a point. So here goes. As Zimbabweans, we can't help everyone, and we can't help people everywhere. And generally, having an incessant need to help all the time will cause what is called compassion fatigue. Basically, compassion fatigue is when you get so invested in a lot of causes, so much so that it drains you, feeling as if you're not doing enough for maybe one or multiple of those causes, feeling as if you haven't, done enough research, you're not talking enough about it, or you're not invested as you feel as you should be. And that can cause like draining, like burnout. You can feel burnt out. And so really, I guess we kind of have to preserve our energy for what we feel is a great cause, and that's an individual thing. I believe some Zimbabweans feel like this particular cause is the cause that they're going to concentrate on. For others, it's another. Picking one cause or picking a couple of causes that you're going to concentrate on does not mean that you don't care about other causes, does not mean that other causes don't matter. It's just a way of preserving your energy. And so in terms of should Zimbabweans be concerned with what happens in other people's countries, in this case, in terms of saying no, the reason is so that we can conserve energy to deal with our own problems. Getting invested in other people's problems and trying our hardest to help them takes a lot out of us, drains us even, so much so that for some of us, when we face problems back here at home, it's like, well, dang, I don't have the energy, I don't have the strength to just, it's too much. So I definitely do get people's concern of like, we don't need to be checking for that. We have our own problems, and we should be investing all our energy, all our research, and all our knowledge and support into our own problems and issues over what happens elsewhere. So time for my personal opinion. I did say I would give my own opinion on the issue. By the way, a personal opinion is just that, personal. So if you disagree, then that's fine. Also, I think sometimes on the internet, people get confused between somebody's opinion and somebody giving you objective fact. And I don't know if that's going to come up in another video. I know I'm not going to be talking about it now. So here's my personal opinion. Generally, I think that we need to strike a balance. I believe in both sides and the points that I have highlighted concerning both sides of the argument. And therefore, seeing that I can't really decide, I think that we should strike a balance with being knowledgeable about other people's struggles, giving back to cultures that we take from, just being well knowledgeable about what's happening in the world, and just really also being concerned with our own issues, not neglecting them or, not giving our all. I think we should give our all to our own issues, seeing that it's our country. We should take ownership of what happens here and how we affect, the country socially, economically, politically, in whatever sphere there is. We are the citizens, and we should try our best in whatever way possible to take ownership of what happens within our borders, and to neglect what happens within our borders in order to be concerned about somebody else's issues, I think is a major disservice to ourselves. So I'm like, yeah, we can be concerned and we can support other people's causes, but not to the detriment of our own. Anyways, so if you're on Twitter, I'm sure you're well versed with the hashtag Justice for Paul. I will try my best to put the link to the petition down below so that we can get justice for Paul. So basically, Paul is a man that got shot down in Hillside area. Well, the reason I did that is because I actually live nearby. And yeah, it's an issue close to home. And seeing that there's not much in terms of information concerning the issue, investigation, this is our chance to really be united for justice in our country and take ownership for what happens in our country. So I'll link that down below. Also, in terms of the recent events concerning the pandemic, we also have to be united and realize that this pandemic is affecting families and affecting our country in a way that we've never really experienced. So whilst we're watching, America deal with the pandemic horribly, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we too are dealing with the same pandemic, and we need to be very mindful of that. Anyways, if there are any other causes that you want to be highlighted, please don't hesitate to comment down below. Let's have a conversation started. Let's have a discussion. Okay, there's another cause I want to bring light to, but I'm scared because it's a bit of a touchy one. You see what I mean? But there are a lot of things that are happening in Zimbabwe that we need to be mindful of and really pursue and be concerned about and take action for. And so, yeah, let's not lose sight of that.
Working across the Maldives, moving into the southwest of India and pushing into the southwest of Sri Lanka as well. These areas continue to see heavy thundery downpours, and I think as we go through Saturday into Sunday, we're looking at around 50 to 75 millimetres of rain.